Hi, my name is Nicole. Welcome to my channel, Travel to Money. In this video, I want to talk about the FIRE movement for those who want to retire early. I'll talk about some key factors that stand out to me as I make plans, how you could consider a partial retirement a bit earlier, and I'll give you some questions to ponder as you make plans for your journey. If you're new here, I have created this channel to help you learn how to travel, adventure, and have fun on the road to financial independence. I have traveled the world, paid off a house in Spain, and I'm on a creative journey to financial independence. I believe the road to financial freedom can and should be fun. I hope you'll subscribe and join me on this journey, no matter where you are starting from. I have been following the FIRE movement for about 3 or 4 years now. If you're not already aware, FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. I'm not sure if it was watching Aman and Christina from Our Rich Journey or if it was in a blog or what, but I have been fascinated by hearing stories of people who learned to budget better, hustle more, and how to make a dollar go a bit further. After working hard at it for 5 or 10 years, learning to invest, the day comes when these various individuals or families are able to say goodbye to their jobs and start an early retirement. During the same years that I was learning about the FIRE movement, I was also learning that travel can be cheap, like really cheap. So cheap that it costs less for me to travel the world slowly than it does to stay at home. Go figure. But as I paid off debt, worked multiple jobs, reduced spending, and aggressively invested over the last couple of years, I've watched what people are doing. I've run my numbers a million times, and I've come to a couple of realizations. One, financial independence is more important than retiring early. Two, you can begin a partial retirement way earlier than you might think. And three, people need a purpose. So let's break all of this down, starting with number one. Financial independence is more important than retiring early. After watching video after video on YouTube, hearing testimonial after testimonial from people who had retired early, and maybe they didn't even retire early, maybe they just retired at a normal age, a good amount of them ended up being bored and went back to doing some sort of work. Retiring early didn't turn out to be all it was cracked up to be. But financial independence still mattered. Going to work can be a lot more enjoyable when you don't have to go to work. The ability to choose is what financial independence gives you. You want to take a year off? You want to work part-time? You want to work full-time? The choice is up to you. Retiring early didn't give people that choice. It just meant they stopped working and they found that they missed it or they were bored without it. So if you're thinking about FIRE, focus on financial independence first, and the early retirement will follow when you want it to. The second realization I had was that you can begin a partial retirement way earlier than you might think. It all depends on what you want out of life. I've noticed that a lot of people are trying to save and invest until they hit the $1 million mark. It's not even about being a millionaire. Sure, $1 million is still a lot of money, but it doesn't really mean what it used to. The reason many people are focused saving until they get to $1 million is that based off the 4% rule, they need $1 million in investments in order to be able to give themselves $40,000 per year to live off of. If you aren't familiar with the 4% rule, basically, in order to retire off of your investments, you should plan to withdraw no more than 4% of your total investments each year. Assuming that your investments are growing at a rate of at least 8% per year, your investment account would still get bigger every year, even after you retire and are taking money from your investment account. I could see living off of $40,000 per year, but how long will it take you to get to that $1 million mark if you only make like 50 grand a year? I think that depending on what you want out of life, you can be really creative. For example, maybe you make a good salary, but you hate your job. Working another 10 years in order to get to that $1 million mark might seem depressing. What if instead of working a corporate job for the next 10 years, You quit your job with just $100,000 invested and just $20,000 or $30,000 set aside for living. Instead of working a 9 to 5, you become a part of a work exchange program or do something like woofing. If you aren't familiar with woofing, check out my recent video on this great way to do part-time work on organic farms in exchange for free accommodation and free food. I think that if you really want to travel, you could easily live off of $10,000 to $15,000 per year. Between couch surfing, house sitting, woofing, and work exchange programs, you can easily live on a very small budget. While you're trotting around the world for the next 20 to 25 years, that $100,000 you left in your investment account is growing into somewhere around $1 million. And that is the power of time. So you could work your butt off for the next 10 years in some corporate job you hate so that you can retire early, or you can take the scenic route, travel the world, do work that is less stressful and that you may enjoy a bit more, and find yourself still at an early retirement, but just a decade later. And I'm not saying that either path is the right path or the only path. I'm just saying you may have more options than you realized. There are so many creative ways to live your life, and that isn't restricted only to single people or couples. Families can get creative too. I often think that couples have it a bit easier than single people because you can both work together toward retirement income, but the per person cost is a lot less for two people to live and retire together than the cost for a single person. Anyway, the reason I think more people should consider something like the scenic route I mentioned all comes back to realization number 3. People need a purpose. Remember how I said that a lot of people retired early and then went back to work? This is why. We aren't designed to sit around on a beach all day sipping margaritas. It's nice for a break, but ultimately we are designed to work, to engage our minds and our bodies. It is good for us physically, mentally, and emotionally. Laying around every day in a relaxed state is actually a recipe for depression. Viktor Frankl said, "Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose." Leo Rosten said, "The purpose of life is not to be happy, but to matter, to be productive, to be useful, to have it make some difference that you lived at all." So my advice is to begin with thinking about purpose now, before you reach financial independence. How do you want to live? And as part of that, how do you want to give? Generally, most people will find purpose in providing something for others. A job may do it for a while, or at least keep you distracted enough that it isn't bothering you. How much purpose you find in your work probably depends on the job. But one day you will likely have to face the question of purpose, and it doesn't need to be something grand and extraordinary. I know a retired couple on my street in Spain that spend their time rescuing and caring for animals, and they also offer free English lessons for those in our town. You don't have to be some sort of internet celebrity or live an extraordinary life to find purpose. It can be something as simple as adding value to those around you in your community, whether that is where you are now or somewhere new. And if you think about it, isn't that what life is all about anyway? So if you've been thinking about the FIRE movement or making plans, I would encourage you to think about whether or not you really want to retire early, or should you make your focus the financial independence part? Secondly, consider the route you are taking to get to financial independence. Would you be happier taking a more scenic route? And lastly, begin to consider your purpose, both now and whenever you get to experience stepping into early retirement. Don't wait to ask that question, and keep in mind that it's okay if the answer changes over time. It likely will. If you know the answers to these questions already, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. Are you planning to retire early? What is your path to FIRE? Have you given thought to your purpose? Let me know. If you have enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to join me every Sunday where travel and adventure build financial freedom. I can't wait to see where your dreams will take you.